Welcome and step into the minds of addiction and recovery. Hello, I'm your host, Brett C. It is an honor to bring into light one of the darkest aspects of our society, addiction. With 20 years of active addiction and 20 years of sobriety, I hope to bring together all listeners on a journey of inspiration and education. With my co-hosts Jared F. and Rich J., we will be sharing our experience, strength, and hope for all listeners to enjoy and have fun with. Now, F3 Recovery brings you the Super Sober Podcast.
All right, welcome to episode number 12 of the Super Sober Podcast. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching on YouTube. We're going to be going another special interview here on the Super Sober Podcast. One of the people that helped save my life in early recovery after I transitioned after my 90-day program. We're going to be doing this interview with Glen S to my right. So it got a special one. You guys got to stay and listen to this whole story of transformation, inspiration, everything. So I'm your host. My name is Brett C. My sobriety date is 4/21/03. I'm an RN with a BSN. I've been working in hospitals for up to 18 years. I work in chemical dependency for the last this is my 10th year. I've worked all over in a hospital, behavioral health, and super excited for this podcast to give back to someone who helped save my life. And we'll go to the left.
My name's Rich, and my recovery date is October 5th, 2013. I have been working in treatment centers for the last 9 years, and I also just graduated nursing school, became an RN. So I'm getting ready to take my licensing. And
Let's give him a cheers for that.
Thank you.
There you go.
Thanks. And yeah, that's it for me.
Nice. I'm Glen S. My recovery date is 9/17/1991. I have a KDAC 2 and an MBA, and I've been working in the business, trying to help people on multiple levels since actually September 27th, 91. I got the keys to the first sober living. Nice. And we're doing detox and residential. We currently have about 72 beds in different locations. And, we're working on some more expansion and moving into primary mental health.
Right on.
Yeah, awesome. So that's a little prelude of what we're going to be doing here. Glen is coming on this podcast. It was my intention to have him on this podcast from the beginning. So this unbelievable story of transformation. When I got introduced to Glen, and that's his house out in Upland, California, I came out of the residential treatment program for 90 days up at St. John of God, and I needed to do something different. I needed a sober living to go to. And God, of course, divinely transitioned me into the 9th Street house in Upland. So I'm fresh out of treatment. I have already sabotaged my last 3 years of recovery, went through drug court, burned that down. I'm on my last opportunity. And then, of course, I had a spiritual awakening in that 90-day treatment center, and I met Glen. And that was down on the 9th Street house, the first house that he had opened with help, which he'll be alluding to all this story. We're going to be going over it. And he gave me a safe place to be. And, it's kind of emotional for me.
Mm.
I mean, to look back where my life is now, 20 years later, to see that he's still in business. We've always remained in contact to a very degree. He went through some emotional times later in his story. He called and asked if I would come and be emotional support and show up for his son and him and his family at a point in time. And I needed a safe place to be, to where I could remain accountable, and the rules that he had at that sober living. And he was always there for every weekly meeting. He would show up and see how his guys were doing. He always had his hand on the pulse of what was going on in that treatment center. And he always led with his heart first. And you could feel that, and you stayed accountable. You wanted to be a part of that. And you wanted, like Glen, to be proud of you. I want him to be proud of me. And he went over my first budget with me. And he took the time and sat down, and we went over my expenses because my transition back after living in his sober livings for a couple of years was precarious and touch and go. And it was a lot of learning. One of the best ways to practice the program as we know, is right there in sober living. So you're in a host of characters in a real touchy-feely situation, close quarters with a bunch of strange guys and people going through it at different varied levels. But if I didn't get into that sober living, I would have never became an RN. So we have another friend, Bob C, out there, who was the manager of this house, who was a registered nurse in drug diversion. He picked up a healthy meth habit, working for the World Health Organization in the Philippines. So I got to know him. He was the manager, and so this one's not about me, guys, but I would have never became an RN. I would have never gotten the new career. I would have never gotten to my next steps of recovery if it wasn't for this man here to my right, to being supportive and giving me that safe place to be. And he didn't mess around at all. So in that sober living, he had some strict rules. I think he probably still has them. And if you relapse, you have to either go in immediately into detox or you can't stay. So he keeps the places safe, kept it safe because a lot of people relapse in sober livings. And a lot of it's this transitional place. And if you come back, you can stay. But if you relapse again, you can't come back for another year. And we watched the play. So Bob was super type A personality, always kept records and all that. So here we are on this 12th podcast, and we get to hear Glen's story. So he even gave me my first desk that I used in my first 10 years of scholastic journey and stuff that I had in my apartment and everything until my grandmother passed away, and then I got my grandfather's desk. So he gave me a desk that I used, and it was just super awesome that I get to come into this 12th podcast and have Glen come on and then talk about his journey. So this is going to be the background story of I don't think I've ever really heard anybody else, any podcast stories about people that own the treatment centers. So it's very special. And so Glen S is his name here to my right. I love you, brother. And I appreciate you for helping save my life. And what recently happened too, 9 months ago, was my wife's niece needed help and they were going to do an intervention on her. But things need to happen super stat.
Yep.
So I was on the way to a little vacation thing that we do every year. I called Glen. Boom, she was in there 2 days later, and she's coming up on nine months sober.
Awesome.
So, man, thank you. And then
Yeah.
when he came over, my wife was like in tears and saying, thank you for helping,
Nice.
her niece get clean and just countless of other people. So let's hear a little bit about Glen and his story and how this all came about.
Nice. Well, thank you, Brett. Super
Yeah.
proud of you, and what a privilege to be involved in helping people get and stay clean and sober.
Yeah.
So I count it a privilege, and I don't see me as being able to do anything else. Yeah, it's an honor to help people. It's got its ups and downs. It's rewards. We got our little Grim Reaper here
Yeah.
as a
Notorious
reminder.
JID.
The whole jails, institutions, and death, man. And it's never been more real than what we currently got going on in society with fentanyl and just so many different people are losing the battle. And, unfortunately, a lot of people don't understand the disease at all. And so they're not only losing the battle, they don't even know they're in a battle. And, being caught up in the grip of addiction and people spinning out and, taking off. I mean, I was a stimulant user, so I used a lot of cocaine. And so when I would get loaded, my wife was a normie and I had 3 kids, so it wasn't cool to be at home. And, I don't want my kids around cocaine. I mean, so I got, anyway, and I end up with too much of it. So it's like, I can't bring it home. So I got to do it all.
Yeah, what a stand-up guy.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, what I didn't know was this is the basic thoughts and the educational piece around the disease concept. I thought that I was a derelict. I thought I was a POS, and, when I would start, I couldn't stop, and then I couldn't not use,
So how old were you when you first started using? Let's
Wow.
do a little bit
All
of
right.
the family history.
Yeah, go ahead. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, for family history, I'm number 7 out of 10 kids. I got 4 older brothers, 2 older sisters, 3 little ones. I'm the youngest son, so the youngest boy. So my older brothers were getting high at home, so I learned how to figure out what was going on at a young age. My grandparents are from Minnesota, right? And so they would come, and I grew up over here in Hacienda Heights, and my grandparents would come snowbirds, it'd be really cold. And so my dad converted the garage into a living quarters.
Okay.
And then when they were gone, we could hang out over there. But it was a small house and a lot of people. And so kind of, 1,500 square foot house with 10 kids and 2 parents. You kind of know what's going on, right? You cannot not know what's going on. And so what happened was my older brothers would bring their friends over and they'd go into this converted garage, which was kind of set up with a couch and a bed and, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And it was the party spot. And so I'd be, peeking in and see what's going on, or I'd be in the room. They'd come in and they're like, "Get out of here," And then so at 8 years old, I wasn't kicked out one time. They came in to do their party, and I was always peeking in, knew what was going on. They were smoking weed and drinking, and I wasn't kicked out one time, and they were passing a joint around, and I went, "Ooh, let me," mimicking what they were doing, took a hit and inhaled it and coughed my brains out. And my brother was like, "What the hell are you doing?" And he said, "Don't do that again." And the joint went around again, and I took another hit. And he says, "Okay, well, F it. If you're gonna do this thing, let me show you how." And that was crazy. I mean, I was 8 years old. I smoked some weed, and then he opened a quart of Miller High Life, the old funky clear bottle with the label on it. Anyway, and so I took a couple of big swigs out of that, and he's like, "Drink, drink, drink," and there was these older teenage kids, 17, 18, 19-year-old kids, and I was 8. And they thought it was cool, and so I smoked weed, I drank alcohol, and then they passed around this pipe, and it was turned to, I figured out later what it was, but take a big hit and inhaled it and cough up a lung, and it was hash. So at 8 years old, I learned that.
Already progressing.
Yeah, at 8 years old, I learned that this was the glue that allowed me social acceptability in my own home. And my brother got into selling drugs, and so I had a lot of people at the house all the time. And it wasn't long, I'm kind of intense type of person, so when I do something, I kind of do it, And so it was time to get high, and I wasn't getting kicked out, and there was dope around, and so back then it was we're talking in 73. Right? That's a couple years ago, right? And so they used to do this thing called 5 fingers lids. They used to put a sandwich baggie and stuff it with, and it was seeds and stems mostly, dirtweed they call it now. But they would use a shoebox, and they would, break it all up and scrape it up and get the seeds out and leave the stems. And so I figured out, and then they would smoke the joint until it was about that far, the roach, and put it in the ashtray. And so I figured out, when they were gone, that I could go through there and find clean. I could get a couple more joints out of that shoebox, and I'd take those roaches and cut them up, and so I learned how to roll. And they leave paper, so I practiced with grass on from the
I used to
yard.
do that too.
You know what I mean? I
Have
practiced.
a
that too,
common
man.
theme through the Super Sober podcast that people were just starting practicing.
Dude, I used to
without-
smoke the leaves off the trees outside.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know what I mean? Before I had access to weed.
Nice.
Like I was already like fascinated with the idea.
Sure.
Wild.
Well, and so I was allowed to party with them when they were there, but when they were gone, what am I going to do? So I figured that I could scrounge her up,
That's right.
and I learned how to scrape the pipe and redo resin and everything before I learned how to do a lot of stuff. I mean, so I was, I'm into getting high, so let's do this thing. And so I figured out how to roll pretty good. So by the time I was 10, I could roll a pretty good joint, my goal was, and I'm kind of, again, a little bit obsessive. So I would take scissors and cut that stuff up. And, a lot of times you see people, especially back then with this dirt weed, is you roll a joint and start smoking it, and half of it would burn and half of it wouldn't. And then all of a sudden a seed would pop. And, it'd go flying. And it was like, so I figured out, if you refined it and take out all the seeds and stems and cut it up really small, it would smoke like a cigarette. Yeah. And so the fun thing was, my brothers and their friends would come in, and my brother would throw down the bag of weed, and he'd say, "Twist them and light them," and that was home for a while. One time, the summer going into 7th grade, I was walking down the hall, and my brother had one of the bedrooms there. A couple of my brothers, and anyway, and so him and his girlfriend were there, and he was leaving, and so she was walking out of the room, and I was walking down the hall towards the room. So his girlfriend Angie said, "Hey, Glen, come here, check this out." And there was a big triple beam in there with a big old pile of cocaine on it. And she said, "Here, let's try this." She picked off a rock and cut it all up and said, "Here, snort this." So I was 11. Summer going into 7th grade, and I did a big old line. It was a pretty good one too for a little, I was not even a buck yet, probably, 98 pounds soaking wet. Anyway, and so I snorted this line, and it was, "Whoa, where the hell have you been all my life?" Yeah. And it was instant, like, man, cocaine. So my opportunities were sporadic for a little while. I didn't get to use it very often, but boy, was I ready for that next line. Right out
Mhm.
the gate, it was addiction now, and I'd already been, I'd already perfected rolling joints by 11.
Yeah.
And, when I went to school, I figured out really quick that in elementary school, I was getting high, but I was still doing sports
Right.
and it was hidden. And then when I went to junior high, I met this guy and I was, I was athletic and did some stuff. And I was on this uneven bars and I was upside down on my knees, swinging and flipping and landing on my feet.
Uh-huh.
And so some dude came up to me and said, "Hey man, that's pretty cool stuff. Show me how to do it." And so he got up there and a pipe fell out of his pocket. Boom. And just a little pipe. And I was like, "Damn, dude, what's up?" First day of school, in 7th grade, junior high, and it was on and cracking. And so I figured out,
Found
it
your
wasn't
people.
hidden anymore. There were other people getting high in junior high. And then I got this other kid that was just like a nerdy dude. And he's talking about getting high. And I'm like, "Man, you don't even, you don't get high. Will you stop talking like that?" And he's like, "Yeah, I got this opionated tie weed." And I'm like, "Shut up,
the tie
And so he's like, "Okay, well, I live right around the corner." And so he had the lunch before I did. And so he said, "Well, if you want to come to my house, I'll show you." And I'm ditching English, And I walked up to his house. It was real close. It was like across the street. There was a house and he was in the house, and then another street. He was at the 3 houses away, but around the corner, so you couldn't really see. Anyway, so we went over there, and he had his parents had the whole back wall in this one room was a bar. And it was like, wow, all this different kinds of alcohol. And it was like, I figured out how to mix this vodka and orange juice.
Yeah.
Made a screwdriver. And then he pulled out this cigar box, and he wasn't lying. He had opionated tie weed. So man, I scissored it up, And I went back to school, couple of screwdrivers, and opionated tie weed. Man, that put me down pretty good.
Fly on
Yeah,
tie.
dude.
Yeah. So I went back to, so needless to say, I got kicked out of that school. I walked back on, and it wasn't the first time, but because it was my new get down.
Right.
And then I'd match what he had. So, and then we got a couple other people to go. So we'd have a puff out instead of, it was his lunch. It was my English class.
Right.
And I was walking back on the campus one day out, coming back, and I was hammered. And there was this guy. He's one of the toughest guys in the school. And he was chasing this other guy that I knew. And he was a pretty big dude. The guy that they were running through the locker rooms, and I was just walking back on campus. And this guy Lino says, "Glen, stop that dude!" And I stuck him. I used to play football, so I tackled the guy. And Lino caught him, and they're beating him up. So we all go to the office and get in trouble. Anyway, and I was drunk, and so I got in trouble for that and suspended. And then
Wow.
I came back after. I don't know. I must have came to the class late, left early or something, but I went into that English. I mean, this is stupid stuff, you guys, right? I mean, I grew up not too smart. Addiction took over and education didn't matter.
Right.
And so I'm loaded and I go into this classroom and I'm eating this bubble gum, which was new back then, right? It's like 1977, 7th grade. Anyway, so I'm sitting here chewing this bubble gum and this old lady, this sweet old lady, kind of a big gal, comes up. She takes my bubble gum off and tells me to put it away because I'm, being an ignorant, loud, obnoxious
Teenager.
little
Just a little
7th
punk.
grader,
Little punk.
98 pounds soaking wet, right? So anyway, I don't know what I was thinking, but she came and took my gum off my desk and turned around and walked away, and I got up and I kicked her in the ass. And I can't tell you why, and normally I'd know better than that. And so anyway, and then I got kicked out of school. So they sent me to another school. And so I did pretty good. I had to go on the other side of town, and it was the rich kids part of town, over by Shabaram, kind of.
Okay.
Yeah, up there in Hacienda Heights, Mesa Robles. The rich kids went there and hung out. And so, but I get a ride in the morning, and then I had to walk home. It was about 4 miles. And so I was like, and they told me, go here for the end of 7th grade. I got kicked out in February, 7th grade. And so finish the year, do good, and you can come back for 8th grade. And so I did pretty good. And then I wanted to go back. And the principal that kicked me out said, "Oh, hell no, you're not coming back." And his wife was the office person at the other school. So Mr. Dickey's wife, Mrs. Dickey.
So
I couldn't get away from the
close
digs.
eye on you, huh?
Yeah. Yeah. So I had that resentment. And so I ended up having to go there for 8th grade. And I did pretty good. But what happened was, in ninth grade, I went back to the high school where all my family, I got a brother 13 months
Yeah.
older than me, we're tight, and then all the people that I grew up with,
So this generational thing's just leading right into it.
Oh yeah. Well, in the meantime, all my brothers and sisters are doing their thing,
Mhm.
and
That's
anyway.
a lot of my story too.
yeah, my brother
Generational
continued to sell dope, and I could really get off onto that stuff, but I learned some really bad things and saw some pretty stupid stuff, and
Right.
it was happening at home, and then I partook.
How could you not
Yeah,
become an addict? Like
yeah. In seventh grade, I was taking orders and selling dope at school.
Yeah, yeah,
I got guys that had money up there, and so they prepaid.
yeah. So did you make it through high school? Did you get your high school diploma?
Okay, so I go to my first day of high school, okay, and I'm back in the neighborhood with all my friends and my brother, and I was locked and loaded,
Mhm.
2 joints, one in each ear. I had bushy hair. My hair doesn't get long; it gets bushy. So first day of school. You, and you, come on, and we went up by the back at Los Altos High School. We went back behind the snack bar thing and smoked 2 joints and walked back on to the lunch break area at lunch. And the narc, this little gal,
Yeah.
her name Jane, she was the narc, and she's
The
you,
narc
you,
lady.
you, come on, and took me up to the office. And so they pulled out, I smoked the weed,
Mhm.
but obviously we were a
Yeah.
little lit, right? And so the principal guy, he was an ex-cop, and so he frisked, and I had Visine, I had Banaka, I had
Yeah.
papers, I had a stone because I like to smoke it all, right?
Yeah.
And anyway, so I had everything but the dope, and so they were like, "Oh, I got you," and so I had a trouble. So no, I ended up getting kicked out
The
of.
continuation school.
I got kicked out in ninth grade, yeah, and sent to continuation high school, but I was still too young.
Mm.
They made me do home study for the rest of the year. It was February of my freshman year, right?
Already, what a blessing.
Yeah, yeah.
No.
So then I go to this continuation high school for the beginning of my sophomore year,
Mhm.
and it was all bad. They allowed you to smoke on campus.
Mhm.
Well, I smoked
Yeah.
cigarettes as well, but I was smoking a joint like a cigarette, and so I mean, one of the first days of school, no kidding, I was sitting up at the top of this hill. It had this like a curb because it was on a hill that came. The back of it was a hill, and so it would catch the water coming off, and it like a wash kind of thing. It's a pretty deep. Anyway, so I was sitting in it. My foot was on the other side of it, and I'm rolling a joint right there. And the principal of the school comes up, and says, "Hi, I'm Mr. So and So." I just kind of did this thing, and she turned around, walked away, and I went and lit it, and while she was walking away, and that was
Yep.
school. And then so that was and then I had a business. I was selling dope.
Yep.
And so I went to school because I had customers.
Continuation school is wild. They just allow you to be bad,
Yeah.
They just accept that you're going to be bad, and it's
Yeah.
like you're just going to be, and this is just how it is. Like
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
what
you
my
come
brother
in,
and
come
all
in
that.
high. They know you're high. Then nobody says anything.
Yeah.
It's just they want you to just
Just show
hopefully
up and
do better
get
than
your
you
credit.
were before.
Yeah, for sure.
That's what I remember.
So anyway, that was all bad. And needless to say, I did okay for a little bit. I had a couple of episodes with the law.
Mhm.
I ended up in 10th grade. I was at that school. I was doing football, and out in the I was into sports pretty heavy, and I still love doing that stuff. But so I was the guy in charge of the gear. And so after the class where we were playing flag football out there. They wouldn't let us tackle each other. Wouldn't let us. Didn't mean we didn't. You had supposed to pull a flag, but I'm going to stick you, especially anybody we didn't like. So, and it was at both teams. We teamed the guy. Anyway, it was that kind of fun stuff. So I was putting away the gear, and then this guy comes out looking for me. He says, "Hey man, there's some people up front that want to see you." I'm like, "What's up?" So I walk up front, and there's a cop. There's a couple of suits. I knew instant I saw him, and it was continuation of high school. They had these partition walls that separated you, the classroom. So there was no all the way up. It was a 6-foot high little partition. And anyway, and so the cop caught me right in the middle of the hallway there, and he said, "Mr. Swanson," and I'm like, "What's up?" And he says, "You're under arrest." And I'm like, "For what?" And so he flipped me around, handcuffed me, and I saw all the people at the school. I mean, pretty much 90% of the school was like had their head out around these partitions and stepped out in the aisle, and so I got humiliated and arrested for. It was a burglary charge, but it turned out to be a receiving stolen property. Some guy that I knew from the neighborhood stole the TV and said, "Hey, where can you? Who's buying this?" And I told him where to get it. And he gave me money, and he got busted and ratted me out to get out. And so, but anyway, the long story of that is I already had some other prior legal issues, and so they took me and this is just one of the key things that helped me. I think it was a great moment in my life, not when it was happening, but later looking back. I had this, like Brett mentioned earlier, this spiritual experience. What happened was I was supposed to do 3 to 5 days. They called it Ricardo M time. Go to juvenile hall for a week and think about your life and what you're doing. And so what happened was I went to court, and the judge had my jacket, and he had included some of my family's legal issues. So he went, "Oh, Mr. Swanson, I'm going to do you a favor. You're supposed to do 3 to 5. No, I'm going to give you 6 months."
Ooh.
And I went, "Oh, yeah, exactly. What?" And then,
What?
and then he said, so he sentenced me, and he gave, hit the gavel, it's over. And I was handcuffed, and I'm like, what just happened? So I got, partied up and really going to go do 3 days, the Ricardo M time, and do a little clean out. And I got 6 months, and they, from Pomona Court, put me on the chain gang, handcuffed me to a big old guy in there. And I was like, "What are you in here for?" He said, "I murdered my mom." And I was like, hey, you know what I mean? And so
the big time.
So we went to the juvenile hall system. I did Los Padrinos for a couple weeks, and they sent me to Central downtown, and then I went up to Sylmar, and then I went to camp. And so while I was in Central, there was this kid, and he was, my mom was sick, and I'm a mama's boy, and she went into the hospital. She was sick, and I couldn't do anything. I'm locked up, and so I was, scared, really. But angry, he's snapping at people. Anyway, this kid said something about your mama, and I was charged at him. I was going to kill him, And this dude grabs me up, and this older black guy, and he takes me in the back, and they called him a counselor there, peer counselor, whatever. Plainclothes guy, not in a guard suit anyway. And he takes me in the back room. He says, "What's your problem?" And blah, blah, blah. I got railroaded. I was supposed to do 3 to 5, bloom, bloom, blam, blam. I didn't do this, blah, blah. And he let me barf. But then here's what he told me, and this was kind of what my point was, is this was kind of the spiritual piece was, he said, "Okay, so you don't feel that your sentence was justified. So I got a question for you. What did you do that you got away with that you didn't get sentenced for? And tell me, is this sentence appropriate, or do you owe us more time?" And I kind of laughed. I said, "Man, if I got in trouble for everything I got away with, I'd probably be here the rest of my life." And so, he gave me this little insight. He says, when you go to camp, they give you can get a credit if you be cool, and they do a point system. And the top 20, there's 100 kids there. The top 25 who earn the most points by basically doing your stuff and staying out, doing the chores and et cetera, and staying out of trouble, you get a credit for a week. So he says, so here's what he said. He says, you can go do 6 months and get out early, get credit for 2 weeks at a time for every week you're there, or you can make this the rest of your life. Yeah. And he said, "See that dude you were going to get in a fight with? He's a group home kid. He's in and out. I never met you." Right? And he says, "You're going to get in a fight. I'm going to let you out there. You're going to fight this dude. We're going to put you in the hole. Then you're going to have to fight his friends. And you're going to be Mr. Bad Boy. And then he says, you're going to get 3 of those. We're going to put you back in front of the judge, and they're going to send you to YA." And I went, "What? So you can do the rest of your life like this, right?" Yeah. And I was like, "No, I didn't like that." So I kind of, I did 99 days. I got out early. I did 12 weeks in camp and got out. And so in that period of time, I was able to obviously clear out my brain. First time I've been sober, not smoking weed ever since 8, and I was, 15. And so in that time frame that I was controlled environment, not getting high, I was like, my God, I evaluated my home life and evaluated, all the stuff that I was doing.
So that was the first time you had a little moment of clarity.
That guy that gave me that information, it was weird that I listened to him. Yeah. And then I considered, and that's what they talk about in this recovery. The second step is open-mindedness. Mm-hmm. And so to have an open mind is just to listen and consider, doesn't mean do. And I can do that. I can listen to what you have to say and consider. Doesn't, if you're not telling me or forcing me to do, because that's kind of the
So how much longer did you use until, let's start going into, because there's so much of your story to get into this hour.
I'm still
and everything.
At 15 here, right?
Yeah.
We'll buzz through. So the answer to the question was, I got out and I got high.
Right.
And I was, but I said I wasn't going to, but it was like I was at home. And then I said, I'm never going to get arrested again. And they raided the house, and my brother sold dope, and he got rid of most of it, but they found a couple tie sticks. Yeah. And so we both went to jail.
It was a serious crime back then, guys, for marijuana.
Yeah. Well, they raided the house. So that, 20 cops, 15 cop cars, and anyway, and I drove by. I was coming home from the beach, and I drove by the house with my brother and my wife, who was my girlfriend then, and her best friend was, I hooked up with my brother. And so we drove by, and the cops were there. I was like, "Oh, go!" And I said, "No, turn around," because my mom was there. Like I said, I was mama's boy. So I ran in, and the dude had me by my wrist, and on my knees looking up. And I said, dude, you're the telephone repairman. And he was the guy that came into Bugda. So it was a big deal back then, man. And they were hot on it. And so when they pulled the raid to the house, it's because they have evidence. You know what I mean? They don't just show up. And he just sold a whole bunch. So I got lucky. And so they put us in a cop car, and then they were bragging. And so my brother said, look, lawyer, don't say nothing. Lawyer. And so they took us, and they said, well, they wanted to talk to me. So I want a lawyer. I want to talk to a lawyer. And so they dropped the charges. But when they put the handcuffs on me after swearing I'm not going to live like this, I don't want to be like those dudes. It's like the disease when you say I'm never going to get loaded again. You get loaded again. You get into that guilt shame. I had that when that handcuffs were going on. I was like, oh my God, you are a POS. I was horrified, and I was scared to death. I didn't know what to do, And so good thing so it was kind of like God showing me, man, this is waiting for you. Yeah. This is real easy to do, and this is what the consequences are. And then I got let go, so I got to see the reality of living that lifestyle, and then I got to get out of it. So I was like,
So how did you transition? You're already seeing your soon-to-be wife of 40 years.
Yeah.
You met her in high school?
Carol and I started dating in high school.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then,
Ninth
so
grade.
what was the final point to where you got sober?
Okay,
You
so
were doing a bunch of cocaine, you alluded in the beginning of the podcast.
Yeah. Well, that was what I wanted to do, but I did smoked weed every day.
Okay.
And I snorted cocaine as much as I could. I did a few all-nighters, but it wasn't that big of a deal. But I knew it was a problem.
Together, you were working.
Well, what happened was after I got out of juvenile hall, I said, I can't do this. And I cut loose some of these friends, and they were in and out of prison. Some of them were dead. The guys that I grew up with, they were just like the guy said, you can make this the rest of your life. Right. You can change and do something different. And so I wanted to do something different. I heard what he said. I considered what he said, and I made the decision I want to do something different. And then I got loaded. Then I got rearrested. But then I was like, no, and I went and got a regular job, and I still smoked weed. I still drank, but cocaine I was trying to stay away from. And I wouldn't say I was an addict in my brain at that time.
Hard stuff, right?
Yeah, stay away from. But anyway, and so I had lots of stuff happen. I ended up going to school late at the continuation high school, and it was probably in April, my senior year, and the teacher was a recovering addict and a pastor guy.
Okay.
Hey, Glen, he's talking about recovery. And I'm like, yeah, Mr. Kellogg, whatever, shut up, kind of, But I listened to him, and so I walked in one morning late, and I was, hey, what's up, and he went, dude, you're getting high this early in the morning? And I'm like, no, not me. And so he went and got that assistant principal, and they tapped me on the shoulder and kicked me out. And I'm like, dude, I'm going to graduate. And they go, not from here, you're not. They sent me to high school, to adult school. Okay. And I went to Hacienda La Puente Adult School down there off of Francisquito and Hacienda Boulevard.
Okay.
It was a gangbanger place. And I was like, I'm going to get in trouble here. Or I'm going to get stabbed or shot. Mm-hmm. So I never went. And so lots of good stuff happened, lots of tragedy. I got kicked out of school. My mom got really sick. My mom died. Oh, wow. And my girlfriend was pregnant. And my car broke down. My motorcycle got stolen. And it was just like that country western record, man. It was playing. And so I did this hanging out with my brother and some friends. And I did this, we were at a friend's house, and they were drinking, especially right after my mom died. And my brother he didn't handle it very well. And he would go in and just take the alcohol, with the handle on it, the half gallon, mm-hmm. right? And just walk out. It's like, what are you going to do? So he's pounding that. And I was like, nah, I'm cool. And I was laying on the couch like this praying, and I was face down, and I was like, what am I going to do? And I just made the decision, God, I don't want to live this way anymore. I'm going to have a kid, so I made this decision. What am I going to do? My wife, my girlfriend at that time, we dated all throughout high school. We were in love. I had already asked her to marry me. I just didn't have anything to offer her. Yeah. And so I had made that decision. And all right, God, I want to do this. I'm going to get married. I'm going to stop getting loaded. I'm going to raise a family. And then my brother's friend comes running in. Glen, hey, man, you got to help me. Kurt's beating this dude up. And it's this family friend. So I roll out there, and he's beating this bark out of one of our friends. And it's like, I don't know why it mattered. But I charged in, like the guy that owned the house came to get me. And so I ran up there, and I broke it up. My brother got in my face, screaming, yelling, spitting at me. And I said, what would Mom be thinking of it right now? And he just said some stuff, and I hooked him. That's his front tooth mark right there. Oh. Dropped him, took out his front tooth. Still don't have it. But, wow. Anyway, and so that was a moment of clarity, and that was a moment of, my God, I got to get away from these people, and I got to do something different. So I got married and moved out of the neighborhood, and I stayed clean for a while. I drank alcohol, And, I got a job and I started, I had my son and then I had, my daughter. And then there was just one of these days I was still working in this city of industry close to where I grew up. And it was a Friday, it was a payday. And I thought, I'm going to go see what my brother's doing and the friends are. And I rolled over to my dad's house and that's where the party was at always. So we were drinking a couple beers and they're doing cocaine. And I'm like, and they're like, here. And I'm like, no, here. I'm like, no. And I drank a couple beers. I got a good buzz on it. And then I'm like, screw it, give me one. And then I got back into using. And so it was one of those things that progressed really fast. And then it was like, these guys were doing a little bit and then they would go get a little more. And then they would run it, buy a quarter gram and then go do it, hide and do them little lines and then go get another quarter gram and do that all night. And I was like, you guys are stupid.
So how
This
many
is-
years did that go on for?
Just for a couple months.
So
and
when
so-
did you got sober in 91, right?
Yeah. So
Nine,
this would have
seven.
been in probably 87, 88.
So another 4 or 5 years of just.
So I got back
and
into
forth.
into using, and then I got back in. So what happened was I got into hanging around with my brother and some of these friends, and then I figured out they were doing the little stuff, and then I was like, you got to do this and get more. And
Yeah.
I used the business brain kicked in, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna buy an ounce and sell to these guys, and so I figured out the guy that was selling was my best man. So anyway, and that was all bad. And then I had a guy at work that was doing stuff, so I got into transacting and with a lot of
So
quantity.
you use that business savvy to fast forward. So you get sober. So what was the final sobriety point? In 90?
So I was doing this major quantities, like I talked about earlier, not coming home for 3 days. I had a 13-day run one time. My wife didn't know where I was at, and I was out snorting cocaine and just, pulled my socks off with skin.
Yeah.
I was mad, man. And so what I had done is, here's what the progression was. I started using again cocaine, and then it was bad. And then I would stay away from home, and then I'd come home with tail between my legs, and not understanding the addiction piece of the powerlessness. And so I would use, and then I'd get loaded, and then I wouldn't come home, and then the dope's gone, the remorse would kick in, the guilt, the shame, the regret.
The cycle.
the-
old.
Yeah, and then I'd come back, my tail between, like a whipped puppy, and she's like, "What are you doing?" I'm going, "I don't know. What's wrong with you? I don't know." And she's like, "Hey, drugs or me, you can do whatever you want. You just can't have both." And I'm like, she didn't want. She's a normie and she doesn't do drugs. She's, doing cocaine is like, same as shooting heroin in her book.
Yeah. Right.
And I'm just snorting it, I'm not slamming it. I'm not smoking it. You should see what those guys do.
Yeah.
Still had that terminal uniqueness going on. But anyway, and so it progressed really fast. So I did this. I went through a series of a couple years of quitting, with and without a solemn oath.
So what got you into the program?
So I did this bender, and I came home after being gone for a couple of days. And boy, there's a whole lot to this.
Yeah, we're just trying to get that to the.
Yeah.
So we
boom.
can get into the other where you're at now.
Sure.
I know it's hard to convey all of this information and
Got it.
story right
Oh, man,
into
Sure.
getting that going. So.
Got it. So yeah, I'll just touch points on stuff and try to get to the good stuff because this is just crazy. But anyway, I'm a little different kind of guy, I guess. I mean, I grew up weird, did a lot of weird stuff, did a lot of dope as a kid,
Yeah.
got out of it, got back into it. So
Yeah.
swearing off, doing all these things. And what funny realized is that I was in trouble and I couldn't get myself out. And so I did this. The last bender that I did, I came home and my wife says, "You're going to have to get treatment or I'm out." And I said, "Okay." And my little sister had went to Impact before me.
Okay.
And so she was there at my dad's house, and I'd been gone for the whole
And
week.
that's the Impact House in
Impact
Pasadena.
in Pasadena, 1680 North Fair Oaks, Pasadena, California, 91109,
Yeah.
562-798-0884. There's your commercial.
There you
But
go.
really, Impact saved my life. So September 17, 1991, I entered Impact.
Okay.
I called the program. They did a screening, and it was a Friday. I got in on a Monday for an interview. They sent me home with a list of stuff to come in. On Tuesday, my wife dropped me off. They said, "Here, 4 to 6 month commitment." Is it 4? Is it 6? I was freaking out over that. And then anyway, so they tell me, "Well, tell your wife goodbye because you're not going to get to see her because it's a hardcore program,
Right.
And so you don't get phone calls or visits for the first 60 days minimum."
Mhm.
And so I walked my wife out and said, "Honey, give me a hug. Tell me it's going to be all right." I was scared, and I hadn't slept in 8 days. I snorted a whole ounce of cocaine that Monday through, and this was the next Tuesday. So, right?
There's never enough Coke.
No. Yeah. But anyway, that helped get me here. So thank God for that. But anyway, I was on a sick one, and it was like 8 nights. I didn't sleep. And so I was a little paranoid and a little scared. And so I walked my wife out and said, "Honey, tell me it's going to be all right. Give me a hug." And she went and gave me both birds and swore at me and said, "Look, I've done everything God asked me to do. Now it's up to you, but I'm done. Or I'm out. I'm taking the kids. I'm getting a divorce. And good luck to you." And I went, and I just
Wow.
came from my job
Yeah.
and turned in my uniforms and got my last check, gave it to her. And so the job, the wife, the kids, everything. I mean,
You had nothing.
everything was
You had
everything
nothing,
was
yeah.
everything
Boiled
was
down to
fried.
Glen.
Yeah. So I'm the guy that destroyed everything. I threw away everything worthwhile in my life, and then I did this treatment program, and then visiting time. I got 62 days. I got second phase. 68 days. I was writing her every day, and I got to use the phone, and I asked her, "Come bring my kids." And my youngest was 2 months old when I went in, and I hated the dude in the mirror. So I had a beard about as long as yours, and why shave? I mean, I don't want to look at that sucker in the mirror, and so. I got a sponsor, started working steps, stuff started happening. And so I got this visit. And so my son was 7 and he was looking at me with those eyes. Because he watched the turmoil and saw what it did to his mom.
Right.
And then he was seeing me. So he was mad. Rightfully so, right? And so, hey, Mike, how's it going? What's up? He was 7, so he knew what was up. And then Cheryl was 3. And daddy, and that was great. And I said, let me have my baby. Now she's 4 months old, and I had that beard, and she was screamed and kicked and wouldn't let me hold her. I was like, she know who I was. And I was like, oh, that knife in my gut, just in the heart, man, it was twisted. I was like, I can't ever let this happen again. And then my case manager, in his infinite wisdom, up there said, hey, man, they offered me an opportunity to go on pro staff there, or are you going to go get a job when you get to 3rd phase? And I just made the 2nd phase, but let's prep for it now. And so I said, well, I'd love to stay married, but my wife told me she's going to divorce me. And
He's all, let that marinate and keep working your program, right?
yeah, well, and then he said, but you got to ask her when she comes for this visit.
Yeah.
And so when she came for the visit, I did that quick introduction, with my kids. And then I said, honey, check it out. I said, if you want a divorce, I'll sign the paperwork. You can have everything, and I will take care of my kids. But if there's any way we can stay married, that's what I want. I'll do anything.
So things got better. You trusted the process. So you opened up your first treatment center in 1994, right? You got sober in 91. So how does that happen from 3 years to getting sober, from Impact House in Pasadena to opening up, with the help of the church across the street in Upland, your first His House?
Well, I went back to, 'cause
we got like 15 minutes to put all of this.
I'll put it together.
We're probably going to have to do another podcast with you on it.
Sure.
So, right?
Sure. Definitely do another one for
Sure, we'll see how it goes. But anyway, here I'll try to get you through this. But anyway, there's so many key points.
It's kind of hard to get all of this stuff. So
oh man, I'm hanging on every word here.
We're like,
I'm hanging on every word, man. I'm loving it.
Process of how much stuff that goes through it to get to this point right now.
Yeah.
So
key points is Impact told me, don't think, follow direction.
That's right.
Right, take cotton out of your ear, stick it in your mouth. Right, your best thing you got you here.
Old school.
Yeah. And it was like, you know what, F you. But then it was, oh, well, thank you, because I'm making some pretty bad decisions. And so they had a pretty structured routine. So that helped. And then they said, work the steps or die, M or F-er.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then they said, get a sponsor, get out of here. And then they were kicking people out for not doing work. So I had the right place, right atmosphere, right environment, the right pressure, the right suggestion.
Right.
And so I followed it. And, so here I get to this 68 days into the program. I got a sponsor. I'm working on a 4-step. Life's working. So then my wife came up at the end of that 3-hour visit and gave me a hug and a kiss and said, all right, I love you, but I can't do the addict you. And we got to stay married. So now I'm
feeling it.
Yeah.
Man, I'm the guy that pissed everything worthwhile off and got it back.
Yeah.
So now, when they told me to get this sponsor, and so I was at a meeting, a little pressure, got a sponsor. He said, let's work this. That's all he cared about was let's work the steps.
Right.
So I'm at this, program with 120 people, and they're doing this at an NA-based place. So they're like, you can put a rock in your pocket to be your higher power. I'm like, hold on, man. I know this God of the Bible, and I've been reading the Bible, but I thought maybe I was gone too far for him. Maybe he was done with me, so I wasn't sure. But the rock doesn't work for me, And it could be a doorknob. Well, I've kicked off doorknobs to rob places. Give me a screwdriver, and I can kick that. Anyway, ain't gonna help me. And then they were, doing these chants afterwards. So I was paranoid. So I asked my sponsor one time. He's picking me up, taking me to a meeting. He says, what's up? I said, I don't know, man. I want help. I don't know if I'm in the right place. I don't know what's going on. And he kind of laughed and he let me vent. And then he said, hey, check it out. Steps are scripture-based. Right. And so then he said, I'll bring you back when I come back next time, the related text. And so he did that. And then when I got back after that meeting I had I sat down and read it all. And then I dove in. After that, it was get out of my way. I'm working the steps.
Right.
Nothing else matters. And so, that got me clean. And then I got the job. I got to stay married. I got that same job back. I go to this job. I'm miserable. I'm talking to my pastor who I asked to mentor me. I'm talking to my AA sponsor, John. And they're like, what's up? What are you thinking about while you're at this factory job? Rehab, helping people. And so I figured it out that I'm supposed to be helping people. So my pastor said,
Amen.
Hey, God put his thumb in your back. He's calling you to the ministry, and you're supposed to help people. And so I don't know what all that meant. So we laid out a plan, and I went to school, Mount Sac. And so I was almost done with school. I had 3 years, and then I was at this men's breakfast meeting with these pastors and these guys after um, breakfast, and they were talking about, what are you going to do with this house across the street? They had bought it, and I had volunteered at the church. Hey, what can I do to be helpful? And I went and painted one of the rooms up there. And so they said, what are we going to do with the house? They'd moved this lady in, and she had a toddler, and she moved her drug dealing boyfriend in upstairs. And then they had the youth pastor and his wife and 2 kids downstairs. And so the guy was beating the bark off of the girl upstairs, and the youth pastor's wife was home alone, ran up there with a bat and shooed the guy off.
Oh my
And then said, we're out. I'm moving out. I ain't doing this. And so they just.
So this
they
is the
didn't-
9th Street house.
This is a 9th Street house.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
they just evicted her. And so the house was empty. So they were saying, because about 6 months before I went and painted that room that girl moved in, I went, wow, this would be a great sober living. I never lived in a sober living. I was in residential. I got to stay married, got to go home. So 6 months later, I'm in this meeting there. And so I said, that'd be a great sober living. They all looked at me and said, what's that? I'm like, and I'm almost done with school to working on my KDAC stuff. So I had a couple more months left. And anyway, so they said, well, tell us more about it, And so I did a little bit more research, a little more than I knew. And I had figured out in the 12-step stuff, you got to help people to stick around. And
Yeah,
people
that's
that people that do that stay, and people that don't.
Right.
So I got to do that. I get to. Anyway, so I figured out a couple of things already. And so they gave me the keys to the house. I went and presented before the church board, and they asked me what I was going to do with it and how I was going to do what I was going to do. And my business plans, I'm so
So you
sophisticated.
took your business skills from the street and started applying it to the real world.
Yeah, but my business
Business
plan was like
yeah.
this. It came to me. I just was in the right place, talking to people, and I was already prepping to do the work anyway. Who
Right.
knew, right? God's timing. So I show up, I speak up, and then I did some research, presented this stuff. And they my business plan was like this. It'd be a great sober living. I've never had a sober living. I've never been in a sober living, but I'll try it. And so they gave me 90 days to see, but I didn't have no money for this. I was working.
Yeah.
And going to school, and I barely take care of my own family. And so anyway, the business model was so complex that it was.
So we got this going on. Let's go to our first picture in our slide here, Solomon, which would be his 32-year chip. That's Glen right there, starting off. And then we'll go into the next slide. And here's some milestones for Glen right here. In 1994, on September 27, 1994, Glen founded his first addiction facility, a sober living home for men in Upland, California. Milestone number 2 in 2001. By the year 2001, Glen began working with the state, taking in parolees who needed a safe place to live with outpatient drug and alcohol treatment services. Milestone number 3 for Glen is having already earned his KDAC license and having established a business. He decided on an MBA, which would extend his reach to more people. Milestone 4, married to his high school sweetheart for over 40 years now, and proud father of 3 beautiful grown children. Glen is known by his colleagues, clients, and employees as a grateful man of integrity, strong faith, and honor. So I came in at 2003. So we can go to the next slide here, Solomon. So this is his treatment center now. So we're talking about moving from when I met him, when got in there in 2003. This is his house, men's and women's treatment center, and new creation. This has been going on for a long time, guys. They're going to be coming up on year 30. So you can go on the website. You can see his house. It started from the one in 9th Street. Then I moved into the second one, which was on Darlington. And then while I was there in that 2 years, things were going so fast for Glen. Then he got his other place out there in Corona, right?
Colton.
Yeah. Colton out there in the Riverside area.
Ritchie Canyon, yeah.
Yep. And then, so go to the next slide. We got some extra slides here going right here. This is a 9th Street house. And this is not what it looked like when it started.
Oh, no.
So he's been just progressing and building. So if we can go to the first video, Solomon, that we went over, if we can just run that, we're going to do a quick video.
This is that
Welcome
first
to the
house.
place where
Yep.
it all began, the 9th Street House. Our maiden journey into hope and recovery for his house new creation treatment centers since 1994. Right next door, the 9th Street apartment building stands as a testament to our commitment to providing comfortable and safe spaces for recovery. And on the other side, nestled amidst nature's best, our Palm House offers a tranquil haven to begin the path to sobriety. You'll find 12 unique His House New Creation treatment centers across Southern California. Just as recovery encompasses inner and outer transformation, our facilities mirror this philosophy. The external beauty of our homes reflect the nurturing and healing environments you'll discover within. These are just glimpses of the harmonious spaces where we support your journey to recovery. Our state-licensed and highly accredited programs echo this sentiment. We know that successful addiction treatment is more than skin deep. It requires a robust plan that heals the mind, strengthens the body, and nourishes the soul. We select the best facility to cater to your unique needs, providing focused, compassionate care that sets you firmly on the path to sobriety and hope. Welcome to His House New Creation Treatment Centers, where the journey to a healthier you begins. Your recovery begins here with us.
That's awesome, man. Can we do the next
Cool.
video there, Solomon? We'll do another one from the women's house over there.
Hi, my name's Andrea. I've been here at New Creation for 69 days. I walked through the doors for my second time. I went back out for 3 years. I called Swanson at 2 in the morning. Within 3 minutes, I got a response, and he told me to come home. And this is home. Ever since I've been back in the program, my life has done a 180. It is amazing. I walked through the door broken, loaded, confused, lost, hopeless, and absolutely no self-esteem. 69 days later standing here, I can look in a camera, I can smile, I have self-worth, self-value, reconnected with God. The most amazing things happen here. The staff is beyond understanding. Most of them have been through what you're going through, what I've been through, and they're right here just to help you get through it. The things that happen in this house are amazing. The changes I've seen in the other clients as well as myself there's no words for what happens here. If you're lost and you're looking for a place to recover, this is definitely the spot to come. Miracles happen here. Miracles definitely happen here. Swanson is the most generous person to everybody, and he just wants to see as many people recover as possible, and that's definitely felt the minute you walk through the door. It's a welcome home. So if you're looking for a home, this is a place to come home to.
Yeah, that's some awesome testimonies to the program, the development of the program. And we wanted to also get into a lot of the background stuff of opening a treatment center. And go ahead and move to some more slides here. We want to show some of Glen's family, get a little bit more personal. Here's which house is this one?
That's the Prado location.
That's the Prado location. This is Prado House up
That's
there.
the Colton House, right?
Yeah, the
Women's
Colton
program.
House, the women's program where we were just at. He did a party my wife was able to go to. I was working that day. My wife won a TV. It's in my den now. It's awesome stuff. And go to the next slide. And that's the Prado House too, right?
It's
No,
the
that's
Palm
the
House,
Palm House.
right behind 9th Street.
Okay, right behind 9th Street. And keep going. We're going to do some personal ones. So this is the 20-year His House anniversary where he flew in Daryl Strawberry, which his story of transformation and addiction was unbelievable. We got a signed ball from him. Daryl Strawberry, who was a big-time baseball player in the major leagues. And that's me and the wife right there, Mrs. Super Sober right there on the 20-year anniversary. That was an awesome party.
Yep.
Thanks for the invite. And
Daryl's got a treatment center, and he's a pastor, and he's doing the do.
oh, that's
This was one of his first gigs.
oh, sweet.
Now he's out there doing it every day.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Look at that. And go to the next one. And that's a 2018 His House party right there. Look at all those people.
That's all right. On 4th of July weekend every year, we do an alumni picnic.
Okay. Awesome. And keep going. We got some more slides right here. This is an homage to his son, Michael. We wanted to talk a little bit about that too. He passed away from getting cancer, right? Brain cancer.
Yeah.
And everything was going really good. Building the program up and keep going. Some more slides here. In honor of Michael and Glen and his son, and then keep going on some more slides here. And that's him walking his beautiful daughter getting married. Just some pictures going through here.
Yep.
And that's him and his whole family. And that's him and his awesome wife. having some fun. And I think, is that about it on the slides there, Solomon? And then here's some questions that we wanted to go
Shoot.
over. So I know we're kind of running out of time. If we can keep this going, is that all right, Solomon? Go a little bit further?
Yeah, we can go a little bit further.
All right, good. So question one, where do you know what made you want to start the program? Which was very organic and understanding you wanted to help other people. And that's what we do, is we live to give. God put it in your heart to do it, right?
Yeah, and the
And
opportunity
and
for that house came
opportunity.
up.
And you took it.
Yeah,
And
let's go.
unbelievable. And look where it is now. Question two, what were some of the challenges you faced going through opening a treatment program, licensing, and other logistics? These are questions from our other co-host, Jared.
Nice.
We can touch on that for a few minutes.
Sure. Well, all kinds of fun stuff. NIMBY. You ever heard that? Not in my backyard.
Mm-hmm.
So I opened sober living. It's not pretty much not regulated. They can't, the city can't tell you, what you can and can't do, but you got to be a good neighbor. You can cause
Right.
problems, and so my first rule was at 9th Street. The first rule that I wrote on the contract for people to live there is no hanging out in the front.
Right.
So low key and be a good
Right.
neighbor, and don't talk to the neighbors. Don't tell them what we're doing.
Yeah.
'Cause, people don't understand us.
People don't want a whole
Yeah,
bunch of
they hear drug
living
addicts and
next
they
to
think,
them.
using is all they can equate to drug addiction. So,
Right.
so when I was come to get licensed, I went to, I was done with school, and I was like, I'm a KDAC counselor. I'm working in I work for Charter Hospital for 3 years. I worked for Loma Linda for 5.5 years. So I'm doing the do. I'm a case manager, and I'm doing what I do, and I'm running a sober living, and I'm limited to what I can do because I don't have a license. I was like, we can do a
Right.
better job. So let's do the license piece. So I went to the city, Upland. And I said, hey, this is me. This is what I got. This is what I want to do. And they handed me a conditional use application, and came back a couple months later. It's a lot of work to do.
Right.
And with a check for $7,800, and the guy refused to take my application. So you can't have that. You can't do that here.
Yeah.
It's like, what do you mean? But we're no drug addicts in our city. I said, dude, they're here now already anyway. They're
Oh, yeah.
everywhere. I'm
Oh,
trying to
yeah,
help
we're-
them.
Yeah.
And so I was, and it turned into a legal battle. So I ended up punting to Darlington, the second place where you live.
Yeah.
I got that license for 6, and then the Prado House, I got that license for 6. And so,
And then once you started getting licensing, they knew you were for real deal.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so, I was doing the case management at Prado in the morning,
Mm-hmm.
and doing the core groups and running the file,
Right.
because that's what I do, right?
Right.
And then I'd leave at noon and eat lunch in the car and go to Darlington and do the afternoon case management there and run the core groups. I
Yep.
did that
You
for a
always
while.
had your finger on the pulse. You're
While-
always around.
Yeah, while I was building the program and hiring staff. And
Mm-hmm.
so, and then I got into it with the city a little bit, and I finally found a great attorney that's very knowledgeable and knows the space very well. And we had to educate the city.
There you go.
Mm.
Yeah, and
Awesome.
so we got
stuff.
approval to, because they 6 or less, they can't really do anything.
Mhm.
6 or more, now we're talking conditional use permit, and now they get into legalities, and so we could do we could do series of segments on
Right.
do's and don'ts.
And how it does.
So for time's sake, it's you want to just get somebody that knows what they're
So you
doing
just constantly,
before you ever try to do it. Talk to somebody who's done it, because you can save you a lot of time. I didn't have that. I figured it
Right.
out as I went.
So you just kept jumping through the hoops.
Yeah.
Kept on fighting and kept on going.
Yeah.
So
Well, and
now-
then we got the blessing, if you would, from the city, and so
Mhm.
I was able to take it to 13 beds. And so I moved that license from Darlington over to 9th Street, and that was in August of 09.
Yep.
I was gonna say, so since obviously at first having to fight for your spot in the city,
Mhm.
are you seen now as the whole everything you're doing viewed as a benefit to the community now,
Yeah, absolutely.
and you're welcomed in the community?
Oh yeah,
which is
yeah.
that's got to be an amazing
Yeah.
feeling after all that you fought for.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, and I'm mindful of all of these things. And what I really want to do is I want to see people get better. I don't have the power to give anybody what I got.
Mhm.
And what I got is from my treatment experience and my professional experience. And so, but I can create the atmosphere and the opportunity and share information. What people do with it's their business.
Mhm.
I want everybody to get it.
Right.
And
Right.
so with that, I like I mentioned Don earlier, I think this is what I'm supposed to be doing, So if you would, it's a God shot, and God just wants me to do this. And so I'm very grateful, because I asked God for help and I got it.
Mm.
I pissed it all off and got it all back and some. And so the responsibility factor is real for me. And so if you look at the properties that I have, we're the nicest place on the block.
Yeah.
And then I train my staff and my people, we keep it that way. And we don't interact with the neighborhood. So, if somebody, and there's a couple
Don't give them a reason, right?
yeah, there's
Don't give 'em a-
there's a couple of times, and not too bad, but in Upland, up in the alleys,
Yeah.
we get some people that do graffiti. We take care of it. Nobody needs to tell us.
Right.
Right.
Somebody dumps trash in the alley because there's an alley behind it. Some people do that.
So making your presence known in the community in all the best
It's a
ways.
positive
Yeah,
environment.
that's awesome.
Yeah, we're definitely
That's
there.
really cool.
And so I've had to deal with other cities, and we've had to educate them. And so, yeah, we have the right. There's some really good stuff. We could do a separate podcast on that about legalities.
Yeah.
I've learned a couple of things. For instance, how do you go into a regular single family residence, buy a home, like a 6-bed, 5-bed, whatever, or a bedroom house, and how do you get more than 6? I know how to do that without a CUP. Wow, which is, I've learned it because I'm stubborn. Like I said, when I do stuff, I'm intense. I'm into it. So these other homes and all this other stuff is kind of unfolded, and the opportunities presented themselves. So I'm just open to the idea and going to walk through it.
Right.
I don't let fear stop me and say, "Shut up, you're coming with."
So
False evidence appearing real tells you everything around. I say, "Come on, you're coming with."
So to keep driving through it and to doing all these things. So what has it been like since you opened? Has it been what you expected? Would you encourage others to follow through with opening a program?
Absolutely. The need is greater than ever.
Yes.
People are dying from fentanyl. It's
unbelievable.
so I'm baffled by some things, and I'm just me doing my thing with the sphere of influence that I do have, But society is in trouble. I mean, if you look at
Big
the
time.
numbers, like last year, over 100,000 people died of opioid overdoses. A big percentage of that was the fentanyl stuff, and the border's wide open, and then nobody's doing anything about it.
No.
And I get the calls
Yep.
from moms and dads and my little Johnny, and help them. And
We just got that call on the 29th too in our family. So.
Yeah, and that's the bad call.
But we are doing something about it. The people have
Yeah.
been doing something about it for a long time, and it's going to continue doing it.
Yeah,
So there's going to be
absolutely.
more people on the podcast, and we've talked a lot about fentanyl over the episodes and everything.
Yeah.
And you would encourage people to do it. And there's a lot of stigma also in that too. So just know, audience and family members and people listening,
Mhm.
that most of us that work in treatment and that are doing this and giving this way, we want it way more for your
Yeah.
family members and your loved ones than they do.
Yeah.
And it's like, we're not just like, and you'll hear the negative thing. Just know that there's corruption in all forms of business.
Yeah.
You're going to think that addiction treatment's not going to have corruption in it.
Yeah.
And people are thinking that it's got to be an altruistic kind of movement. So don't let a little part of corruption, because it's all the way through all business
Sure.
on the planet, that there's not going to be some attached to addiction too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So don't let that be like there's not good people or there's shady stuff going on in the background. People are, most of the part in addiction treatment, have their heart in the right aspect
Mm-hmm.
of doing things
Yeah.
and wanting to help people.
Yeah. Well,
Because
the
there's a
issue,
lot of other ways to do business, and it
course.
doesn't have to be with helping people,
Yeah.
because people overdose in those treatment centers. I know you got a lot of stories of that. I know when I was in the 9th Street place, one of the older veterano guys overdosed right on the toilet and was found dead with a needle in his arm. And we can go into all of those different scenarios, but that's happening.
Yeah.
And that still doesn't deter Glen from opening up more and helping more, because there just needs to be more and more help.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I mean, the society doesn't understand. There is corruption in everything, but I try to focus on what I can do. There
Absolutely.
are a lot of good people,
Yeah.
So the stress in the industry, and there's lots of things to focus on. And so I try to, I was fortunate enough to work at Loma Linda, and fortunate enough to have one of the best
Mhm.
guys I ever met. Jeff
Mhm.
was my supervisor. And so I was, I went to this Loma Linda, they had this big mission statement. I thought I can get behind that. And then I roll in there, and then I started looking at the staff and started looking at the distractions. And I was like, wow, this is a Christian organization, right? And this is happening here.
You
And
see,
this is
you start
happening.
picking it apart, right?
Well, I started looking at the people and
Yeah.
paying attention to the staff in there. And then so I'm spun out talking to my supervisor, and he's like, dude, what's wrong? And I'm like, "Buh,"
Yeah.
and I laid it all out, and he let me barf, and then he said, okay, are you all done? And so this is one of the smartest men I ever met. And he said, okay, why are you here? And I said, well, God called me to this. And he says, what are you supposed to be doing here? Loving on the people.
Mhm.
He says, you're pretty good at that. And I thought, oh, that's great. So what do you mean? And so he says, focus on that. You're going to be fine. If you focus, and this is a scary
Fun,
truth.
yeah.
He says, if you focus on the staff, you're going to be disappointed. Like
If you look for it, you're gonna find it, right?
yeah, and whatever you look for, you're going to find.
Mm-hmm.
And absolutely. I mean, I could get off onto all kinds of fun stuff, but I had the privilege of meeting Dr. Paul, Dr. Alcoholic Addict.
Yeah.
They changed the location and the title of his story.
Prayer flipping.
I got a little resentment out of that, but in the everybody has heard that acceptance is the answer to all my problems.
Yep.
But if you turn the page, it gets into, it says, if I focus on what's good today, have a good day. If I focus
Yep.
on what's bad, have a bad day. Period.
Right.
Just take that little piece there and then go live it.
Or simple
If,
concept.
Right.
when I get up in the morning, if I look for good, I find it. If I look for bad, I find that too. It's
Mhm.
everywhere, both of them. Everybody's got good and bad.
Right.
So I can follow the best, smartest, wonderfulest person you know and follow them around. I can find their negative if that's what I'm looking for.
Yep. And
I
God,
can
that's
show
such
you
a
that
huge.
fault.
That's such a huge part of recovery too. I
Yeah.
mean, it really is.
Yeah.
I remember like early on in my recovery, just like as soon as I'd wake up, it was so important for me to read like a daily meditation. And it still is today, but like so important early on because my head would go to a dark place like right away. So I needed to start inputting some like good information because my default that early on was really just not good. It
Yeah.
was a bad place to be and it would start my day off wrong and then my perceptions wrong and then things happen accordingly, depending on how I view things. So super important, like such a
Absolutely.
simple concept that's just so huge.
Yeah, the gratitude list.
Totally.
I learned that in
Totally.
treatment.
It
know,
gets
and so-
down to the basics is
Yeah.
what we're talking about
Yeah.
here. So for me and my program and everything, I always work. We've talked a lot about on the podcast in previous episodes that Glenn's coming from a point, and I know, and the treatment center that I work on and stuff, if we come from a point with putting the program first and ourselves in the program and using our coping skills first and basic stuff first, that it's going to keep on blooming and prospering.
Yeah.
And I know we didn't get much time to talk about Michael and stuff, but your son passing and then you working through all of that and then pulling back from the program, right?
Yeah.
You had to pull back and then spend that quality time with your son, and he passed away, and then losing, one of your children
Yeah.
before we pass away. You want to talk about that for a couple minutes? I want to kind
Sure.
of hit about. I know it's a touchy
Yeah, yeah.
situation and stuff.
Well, I
but-
mean, it's crazy. My son was 7. He was mad at me, and when I got out of treatment, when I was in treatment, like I talked about earlier, he was like,
This is Michael, right?
Michael, yeah,
yeah.
It's Glen Michael Swanson
Yeah,
II,
yeah.
aka Michael.
Mm.
But anyway, it was important for me to give him that time that I didn't because I was trapped in the cog of the addiction wheel, and so I coached Little League, and we became tight. Hey, all the things that my dad never did for me, let's do that for him.
right.
Well, my dad did that I didn't like, let's not do that. And so I
Right.
started trying to focus on raising my kids. It's my responsibility, and I really loved them. I mean, he made me a man.
Right.
My son was born, he gave me meaning, purpose.
Right. And I remember Glenn, reaching out, and he said, "Hey, can you show up to the celebration of life?"
Yeah.
And
you.
it was out there. It was a
Thanks for
beautiful
being there.
service,
Yeah.
man, and I was honored that you asked me to do that.
Yeah. Thank you for being
And
there.
I'm going to be going to a funeral next week, and one of my catchphrases that I've learned in my recovery is the best way to honor those that have passed is to live well.
Yeah.
And Glenn continues to do that, and the legacy of helping other people and all that
Yeah.
too. And I got to meet Michael a couple
Yeah.
times,
Yeah.
and I know he's a part of the family business
Sure.
and helped out. And man, and
Well,
then,
when I got that first 2 licenses, he
Mhm.
was a weekend staff at Darlington.
Mhm.
So he was mowing the grass, when he was
Yeah,
a little
yeah,
younger,
yeah.
and then he became a support staff, and then he worked his way up as a controller of the company.
right,
And he was an MBA student at APU.
Yeah.
He was almost done, and he had a seizure, and it turned out to be a brain tumor, and and so how do you not, and so my thing was I got to be there with him. I'm not going to be at
Absolutely.
work when he dies, and so
right,
he made it 2 years and 11 days,
Mm.
and it had glioblastoma, and so it was fast growing, and they said, Kaiser, they said inoperable.
Oh,
I,
no.
I didn't settle with that, and so I got into that mode. So I was fortunate enough to have my brother working for me as my operations guy,
Mhm.
and so Mike take over, and my clinical director at the time, Sue. You guys work together, and I'm out. I'm going to do
Yeah.
everything I can, and I had 2 more years with him.
Well, wow.
Yeah.
And the blessings of that kind of stuff.
Well, I was sitting in a meeting the other day and they were talking about like somebody had lost their dog, and she was like talking about how she was grateful. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, how are you grateful, that your dog died? No, and she's not grateful that her dog died, but she was grateful that she's able to show up and be there through the process,
Mhm.
and she had that responsibility to stay clean through this,
Yeah.
to honor her dog, and what a blessing it is to be able to suit up and show up, for your son and then go through the whole process and then stay clean and honor his name just by continuing to do what you're doing, especially
Sure.
when the kid's seen you loaded before, or at least not come home, when
Oh
you're
yeah,
younger.
he saw me out there. Yeah.
Yeah, and so
Yeah.
such a beautiful thing, and like normal people don't get that because they've been able to show up, but when that's been taken away from you by addiction, and there's times where you carried shame and guilt for not being able to show up,
Yeah.
then you welcome these tragedies because you're about to face them and you're about to
Yeah.
show up responsibly and walk through them
Sure.
with grace and dignity and stay clean through them. And it's like such a beautiful and powerful thing.
This program makes that possible. And like I said, when I got to stay married and I got to raise my children, one of the things when I was contemplating in treatment, knowing that I'm getting a divorce, it was inevitable, and it was, my wife gave me the birds and split. It was like, oh my God, the best thing ever happened to me is gone. But good for you. But you deserve so much better, but one of the things that haunted me at night, I was in a room with 4 dudes. In the middle of that, right? I had the thought, that my kids are going to call somebody else dad, and that doesn't work for me.
Mm.
So it's like, then I got to have the opportunity to raise my kids after I gave it away. I threw it away with my addiction. And so what an honor. And, so I take that to heart. I'm close to my kids. My youngest, that 2-month-old, that was 4 months old, there's a gap in there before she saw me. She doesn't know me as an addict. And she's getting ready to have her first baby, due on the 24th of this month.
All right.
Right? It's little boy, Williams. I'm going to have 3 grandsons.
Oh yeah.
And but she's in the business. She was working at Disneyland and a hostess at Cafe Orleans, and did that for a little while and figured out, my thing is, I don't care what you do, just be the best at it. And I'm
Yeah.
going to tell you what business to get into. That's for you and God to figure out, but shine at it. You know what I mean? So she figured out, I'm going to do this bachelor. She was doing her undergrad, prep work, and then in the program, psychology major. And so, you're going to get into this business? And anyway, so she's joined the family business, if you would, and she's now a 5-year post-licensed LMFT. She's my clinical director.
Awesome.
Amazing.
Yeah, and she's just amazing. She's so smart and passionate, and
I mean, who would have thought, right?
Yeah.
Who would have thought
Who'd have thought?
that? I mean,
From the
just amazing. Just the story you told us, and it just gets like there's layers to this onion.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it's getting deeper and deeper.
Yeah.
This is incredible.
sure.
Yeah. Well, I guess we're gonna. Can you pull up those questions again on the last of that, Solomon? We're gonna be wrapping it up here. So, to go through all this and to go from the phoenix and the ashes, and we're gonna have to get you back on here and
Absolutely.
talk about
Yeah,
all
this-
of those things, because the last question is, have you had to change any of your personal opinions in order to help others in today's climate?
My God.
And I mean, of course, you have to just shuck and jive and keep on adapting. I've been working in treatment for 10 years.
Yeah.
I've been on the sidelines watching your process and then other people's and so many different things. And
Yeah.
just want to let you know, proud of you.
Thank you.
And we was talking about a new place that he's looking at. It's already texting just before the podcast started, opening up a 70-bed place and coming in Claremont. And to keep on going. So the help is out there, guys. We're doing it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I guess we're going to wrap it up from here. And thank you for coming on the Super Sober podcast. I
Yeah.
wanted to do a call to action. We got that stuff up there on this, Solomon. Will be you can reach us on the email at info@supersoberpodcast.org, info@f3recovery.org. You can see on the website f3recovery.org. You can see Glen's information up there on his house and new creation. You can it's a growing platform. So this is episode 12. We're going to keep on going with it. We're going to have to get Glen back here and get more behind the scenes stuff and what's going on, which is something that really people don't know about.
Yeah.
And
Sure.
all the
There's still
trials
so
and
much to talk
tribulations.
about.
There's still so much to talk about.
Sure.
And
Well,
the stories are so vast, and I was trying to hurry it along a little bit and
Yeah.
get to it.
but it takes time. Yeah.
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 And I tend to get on it, but there's key points in there that I've tried to bring out. But and we can get into whatever topics
Absolutely.
you like
Let's
to,
do
man. I know a
that,
little
yeah.
bit about it. I've learned a couple of things.
Yeah.
I got a lot of what nots to do.
Yeah.
So we could look at, hey, what don't you do when you want to start a program?
Yeah. And
When you're helping people?
And do people reach out and ask you, right, how you do
Oh,
things?
yeah,
And you were just talking about another employee that you helped him open up another sober living, and we're out there doing it. So if we don't keep on doing it, and if you're not aware of what's going on, it's time to really start sharing this podcast. There's so many other people out there that are doing this content. We've been out there. Glen has been helping the public and the communities for over 30 years. And if it wasn't for Glen, I wouldn't have had the safe place to go. And all the other people that are doing it, this just keeps on branching out.
Yeah.
So it looks dark on the surface of our society and stuff, but underneath it is this growing, higher raising. It had to start, God knows, from the bottom up and not from the top down.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So that's what we're doing. Reach out to us. You have any questions for Glen or whatever, you can email him through. You can call his treatment center. He's a super busy guy, but he's doing it. And
Yeah, I got an intake team. There's somebody
Yeah.
answers the phone all the time,
Yeah,
and a call
exactly.
service when it's off hours. So he's always going to answer the phone.
So if you need
it's
help,
important.
you want
Oh,
your
yeah.
loved ones to go to a safe place where even the owner is got his finger on the pulse of what's going on out there. So we appreciate you listening. I know it was a little bit longer. This is the longest podcast so far.
Nice.
So and justifiably, and so
Totally.
thank you for listening, guys, and keep on keeping on.
Nice.
Thank you for listening to the Super Sober Podcast. Go to our website at f3recovery.org. That's F3Recovery, all one word, .org. We're turning fight, flight, and freeze into free form and flow through practicing the 12 steps and staying accountable to change. Don't forget to keep on keeping on.